He's working it, and I'm going to tell him to move it. Greetings. Greetings. Welcome to Shorter Community African Methodist Episcopal Church, Shorter AME. I am Vicki Wilhite. I live in Green Valley Ranch, that's Police District 5 and City Council District 11. I lead the social justice ministry at this church. Shorter is a member of Together Colorado. We are happy to be with community. I am standing in the gap for our pastor, Reverend Dr. Timothy E. Tyler, and our First Lady, Dr. Juanita Mosby Tyler. They couldn't be here. I know many of you know Pastor Tyler, and his mom passed away over the weekend. So that's why they're not here. His mom's name is Bishop Carolyn Tyler Gittrey, and she passed away on May 3rd. So we hold Pastor Tyler, Dr. Juanita, and Chanello and family in our prayers. One housekeeping item, if you need the restroom, just go right back out this door, go to the left, and there'll be somewhere out there. If you get lost, there'll be someone out there to help direct you.
Hello, my name is Moshe Kornfeld. I am the Executive Director of Colorado Jewish Climate Action, a group that's strongly connected with Together Colorado. However, this evening I'm here to bring a little bit of spirit and song to this event. So we'll sing together. So please join me, and in a moment there will be a slide, and we'll learn this song, and then throughout the evening we're going to come back to this melody, and we'll sing it, and we'll hopefully grow more and more powerful through the evening. So I'll start, and as we get in, you can join me for the words rise, and then for the people, the words that are for the people. So we'll start. We rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise, in hope and prayer we find ourselves here, in hope and prayer we're right here, in hope and prayer we find ourselves here, in hope and prayer we're right here, we rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise. We now welcome Sharon Battle to continue with words of introduction.
Good evening. Am I loud enough? Good evening. All right. Lots of different faith traditions here. Can I get an amen? Amen. All right. Y'all are present. All right. My name is Sharon Battle. I want to welcome you. My faith community is the New Pearl Church. I am the board president for Together Colorado, and my community is Montbello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So as we are getting prepared, I want you to think about the people in your life that you love. Who do you love? And so while you're thinking about that person, we're going to pray. So we're going to pray and ask God to come in. However you believe, pray. God, we ask you, come into this place, be in this room with us. Help us hold those that we love in our heart, our community, and let us be safe, because we are the people who make each other safe. We thank you for this opportunity to commune with different faiths in this one place. We are all neighbors, And we ask you humbly to help us focus on those we love, focus on those we are neighbors to, as we become the community, the beloved community. Amen? Amen. Amen. So in the welcoming, I'm going to ask you to please stand when I call on you. Okay, so you're a great group that can follow instructions, right? All right. So when I call on you, stand. It would be nice if we can have community faith leaders stand. Let's give them that example, y'all. Community faith leaders stand. All right, they showed y'all how to do it. So now we're going to have the nuns stand. Let me define that for you. We want to recognize those people who are not a part of a congregation or particularly assigned or part of a faith community. We want to recognize that there are nuns among us. All right? If you're a nun, please stand. So we have good students here. So Denver, Together Colorado organizing leaders, stand. Now I'm going to ask you guys to stay standing. Did all the Denver organizing committee members stand?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. All right. So now Together Colorado leaders from outside of Denver stand. If you're not, hey, all right. So that is really important that you know that we have so many people across Colorado that are a part of our community. So now we want to take some time to call out the public officials among us, city council members and their aides. Council member Gonzalez Gutierrez, please stand. Chief Thomas, please stand. DPD staff, please stand.
Sharon, the other council.
Oh, I left some people out. Council member Lewis. Council member Parody. Torres. Cashman. All right. D.A. Walsh. Office of the Independent Monitor. Liz Castle. And Nicole Taylor. All right. All right. Citizens Oversight Board, COB. All righty. So, Transforming Our Community Alliance, TOCA, Kristen Seidel. That's it? Okay. All right. Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition. Woo-hoo. The Denver Foundation. Woo! Any other public officials and your staff, please stand. No? All righty. We also want to thank any and all of you in the room who haven't been identified that work on any kind of criminal justice reform. Give yourselves a hand. Tonight's presentation to the community with our leaders asking the questions, that's how it's going to happen. Our leaders are going to ask the questions, and our public officials will be answering questions. These questions, answering these questions. On the back of your call to action form, and I call myself bringing one up. So you should have a call to action form. And so on the back of your call to action form, if you have questions that you want to ask because something that we say might cause you to have a burning desire to have that thing answered, and we won't have time for that tonight, so please put it on the back of your card. We will follow up. All right? Okay, y'all say we will follow up. This is where you're going to put your questions, okay? We're committed. So now, are you ready? Yeah. All right. Now, okay. Okay, now the agenda is on the screen. This is what our agenda is for the evening. And I'd like to call up Ann Carlberg.
Thank you. I'm Ann Carlberg, and I'm a leader in Together Colorado's Denver organizing chapter. I attend the Kirkabani Bray United Church of Christ in Southeast Denver, and I'm a resident of West Denver's Barnum neighborhood. We at Together Colorado created the credential to be the overarching guide to our work. Together Colorado and our political arm, Faith in Colorado, represent statewide community organizations leading a faith and race solidarity movement. We unlock the power of people through faith-driven community organizing to bring human dignity to the center of public life. We have a radical commitment to developing, training, and equipping leaders to build power to effectively dismantle systems of structural racism and rebuild the beloved community. We aspire to make the way for a Colorado where our government and society reflect a place where everyone has the opportunity to thrive without exception. We are a member of the international faith-based network, Faith in Action. Now I give you Katie Lunsford.
Good evening. I'm Katie Lunsford. I am a leader with Together Colorado, a member of Augustana Lutheran Church, and a resident of Central Park. At Together Colorado, we are committed to continually addressing anti-racism in all we do. This is Together Colorado's anti-racism statement. We are stronger together. We acknowledge that our nation's wealth and power is built on land stolen from indigenous people, imperialistic foreign policy, labor performed by our African people under the system of chattel slavery, and upheld by the racist lie of white supremacy. Systemic racism from our country's origins continues to perpetuate inequality. In Together Colorado, the love and wisdom from our various faith traditions centers us with the power of our multi-faith values drives our anti-racism work as we strive for systemic and individual change. We envision a world where people of every race and marginalized group can thrive. We recognize that becoming a racially just organization is a continually evolving process, and we fearlessly and lovingly hold ourselves accountable to anti-racist work as individuals, as an organization, and as members of the broader community. This requires a difficult, courageous, and long-term commitment with the end goal of building a genuinely diverse organization that is free from racism and infused with the principles of respect, compassion, and accountability for wrongdoing. We are stronger together. I now welcome Jeff Ackerman.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Ackerman. I'm a leader in Together Colorado, a resident of Central Park, an elder at Montview Boulevard Presbyterian Church, which is a faith community partner in Together Colorado. So I stand before you tonight as a white, Christian, heterosexual, cisgendered male, U.S. born, married with children, a homeowner whose parents and grandparents were asset-building homeowners. They were college graduates, which allowed me to be financed my education and my home ownership. In effect, I'm the desired demographic of this current administration. This administration is aggressively reinforcing a socially destructive caste system, a system woven through American history. And my demographic is high up in this caste system, apparently just below white male billionaire. And this administration's reinforcement of a caste system is what concerns me and what concerns Together Colorado. We are living under a steady onslaught of federal efforts, many designed to assure that this caste system continues as the American norm. And this degrades our social progress, putting at risk all that we at Together Colorado are working toward. As you heard in our credential and our anti-racism statement, we have a vision of a better way, of a beloved community. Nowhere is this clearer and more at risk than in our efforts to improve policing practices in Denver. These are improvements that we have advocated for and built together since 2017. We will share that history tonight. We feel strongly that now is the time to affirm and enshrine our progress, review our results, and if need be, improve these practices. Against this onslaught of societal destruction being orchestrated by the White House, we come here tonight to hold up what is good here in Denver and ask for stronger and renewed commitments from our local leaders and to continue moving forward. As your host for the evening, I will guide you through this agenda. Throughout the program, many of Together Colorado's community organizing leaders will continue to come before you. At this time, I'll invite back to the podium one of those leaders, Vicki Wilhite.
Thank you, Jeff. I will start with the big picture. The United States leads the world in mass incarceration. The chart compares incarceration rates in the United States and Colorado to founding NATO countries and is data from 2024. The United States has the highest incarceration rate of any independent democracy. On the screen, you can see how Colorado stacks up against a state like New Jersey and Louisiana. For far too long, the criminal justice system has been used to control people of color, especially African American men and boys, either by prison, by parole, or by probation. Together Colorado believes that any meaningful reduction in incarceration requires changing things on the front end before people are even put in prison. I give you Sarah Nichols.
Hi, my name is Sarah Nichols. I'm a leader with Together Colorado and a resident of the Lowry neighborhood, which is in Council District 5 and Police District 3. I'm also a member of Montview Boulevard Presbyterian Church, which is a member congregation of Together Colorado. Changing things on the front end includes how we interact with and how we care for each other, as described by our public safety vision statement. As people of faith, we believe community is built on relationships of mutual respect, love, understanding, compassion, honesty, and justice. We believe that safe communities are communities in which we take care of each other, value knowing and trusting one another, and share a common understanding that we need each other. We believe safe communities trust in the power of relationships. Safe communities put their resources and community dollars into affordable housing, grocery stores, good schools, places to play and recreate like parks and community recreation centers, and health care from the cradle to the grave, including easy access to mental health services. We are aware there is a dominant narrative that tells us our relationships and our neighbors cannot be trusted. A narrative that would have us believe we need to fear each other. As people of faith, we say we have heard that story before. We have heard the fear-based story of the community is compelling, and we have felt it too. We have felt it chill us. We know it makes us smaller and diminishes our lives and keeps our communities from flourishing. Instead, we choose to come together here to build community and relationships, reach out to each other, and create the safe communities we know are possible. We, people of all faiths, races, and backgrounds, keep each other safe. I invite Vicki back to the microphone.
Since 2017, Together Colorado has reimagined public safety in Colorado, rooted in respect, justice, and accountability. We are taking steps toward a public safety vision to reduce incarceration in Colorado by 40%. The items under the steps are not only a fraction of the work that we do on criminal justice. Each year, we fully engage with the legislative session and we seize other opportunities. We will continue to work on reforms, hopefully with many of you. According to CPR News, in an article published in March of this year, Colorado is near the top in the United States for shootings involving law enforcement. From 2015 to 2024, there were 375 fatal police shootings in Colorado, according to information that was compiled by the Washington Post. Almost all the shootings were ruled to be justified. Now, Colorado has consistently ranked 5th in the nation per capita for the frequency of shootings by law enforcement. And the state's rate has actually gone up in the last 5 years, despite legislative efforts to curtail them. Legislative efforts included body cam, improved training on use of force, and making it a crime for officers who fail to intervene when another officer is using unjustified violence. Please note that the information I just provided about shootings is about Colorado. It's not reflective of Denver. Denver has been a leader in Colorado for being a forward-thinking police department and for making their policies more humane. But we want to know if the changes to legislation into Denver's policies are working.
So tonight, we bring before you 5 Denver policing practices. As shown on the screen, they are the restricting of use of force, limiting the use of show-ups, active bystander training for law enforcement, known as ABLE training, before the blue and beyond the badge, or B4B training, and limiting low-level traffic stops. Our format for the rest of the evening will go as such. Each topic will be presented, its history, its status, and its concerns. Then Together Colorado's questions will be posed to our city officials. These questions seek public commitments based on our Together Colorado code governance approach to civic engagement. So in the spirit of code governance, we will seek agreement about our progress or our lack thereof. We'll address the need to share data and analysis, identify what actions are needed to achieve progress, and how to enshrine these policies and practices as city ordinances. So we'll now turn to our focus of our first topic, addressing police use of force, and I welcome back Vicki Wilhite.
Use of force. No matter our race, our gender, where we live, where we came from, our physical ability, the language we speak, or what job we do. We all want to walk through our communities without fearing for our lives or our loved ones. Use of force in the context of law enforcement may be defined as the amount of effort required by police to compel an unwilling subject. Use of force is permitted under specific circumstances, such as in self-defense or in defense of another person or another group. In January of 2017, Together Colorado, with support from the Denver Justice Project and the Colorado Latino Forum, held a solidarity action for criminal justice reform and police accountability. People gathered right here at this church to tell personal stories of incidents with law enforcement. That event started a faith-based movement to change the culture of law enforcement and the justice system, to be racially just, to protect immigrant families, to address overcrowding in the Denver jail, to implement policies that would be more humane, to establish relationship and trust with the community, and to evaluate use of force definition and policies. How many of you were here for that event? Thank you for coming back and thank you for your stick-to-itiveness. Since then, legislation passed and the Denver Police Department changed its use of force policy. In 2020, Senate Bill 2217 passed. That's legislation requiring peace officers to apply nonviolent means when possible before they resort to using physical force. In 2020, DPD changed its use of force policy, directing officers not to rush into volatile situations and to employ de-escalation techniques that limit using weapons against people and vehicles. So the major changes to use of force since 2017 are restricting to DPD's use of force, restricting shooting at moving vehicles, de-escalation. They have a decision-making policy or model, I should say, that helps officers decide when to use force and what type, and requiring the duty to render aid, the duty to intervene, and the duty to report use of force. On the screen is the DPD use of force dashboard. The first year is 2020, and it doesn't have policy changes that came into effect for 2021. So 2021 is most reflective of DPD's most current policies, procedures, and reporting practices. We'll ignore 2020 and we'll ignore 2025, the last year, because that's a partial year. But if we look at 2021 through 2024, we see an increase year over year in what's reported on the dashboard as use of force. When we drill down into the data, we can see that most of the use of force is happening downtown, and we can also see that use of force is placed into two categories. The two categories are Tier 1 level of force are those less likely to cause serious bodily injury or death. Tier 2 level of force includes lethal force or force likely to cause serious bodily injury. The Office of Independent Monitor, this is a report from the OIM. It's from their annual report, and they show a reduction in 2024 over 2023 in shootings. They also show that community-initiated complaints are down. For those who might not know, the Office of Independent Monitor is the civilian oversight agency for the DPD and the Sheriff Department, whose key functions include receiving, processing, monitoring, and publicly reporting on community complaints, officer-involved shootings, and in-custody deaths. They also make recommendations and they engage the community with law enforcement. Also, there's a Citizens Oversight Board consisting of 9 community members that's broadly tasked with assessing the effectiveness of the Denver Department of Public Safety's hiring, training, and disciplinary processes. The board is also responsible for appointing, with the consent of the City Council, the independent monitor. So Chief Thomas, we have some questions for you. I invite you to come to the microphone. Thank you for being here, Chief Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Chief Thomas, the Performance and Transparency Dashboard shows that the Denver police are using force more often, not less often. In 3 minutes or less, will you explain that trend to us? Or after researching it, will you explain it at your next public community meeting?
Certainly. So thank you for the question and really honestly the opportunity to provide some context. And so the reason why those numbers have increased is because due to some policy changes that have been instituted, we are actually reporting more things as force. So as you know, we're reporting, whenever we holster a weapon, that's now being reported as force. Where prior to that, those first years on the dashboard, we were not reporting that as force. The other thing that we were not reporting as force was instances where we were guiding people to the ground, really no strikes or anything like that, but just guiding people to the ground. Mm-hmm. But my assessment of that situation is that is an exercise of force. I mean, they didn't want to go to the ground, and we in essence forced them there. And so I felt that was appropriate to capture as a use of force. The other thing that we were capturing as use of force is instances where no force was actually used. However, the person complained of an injury. And so we're having use of force reports conducted in those instances as well. And one thing that I would like to point out, I think it's worth mentioning that this transparency dashboard that these statistics are listed on is something that I instituted, when I first became chief in 2022. One of the things that I wanted to bring was more trust, more public trust to the police department. And so I thought it was important to show a lot of our performance as well as a lot of our, just bring some transparency to the things that were happening within the department. And so we've made a bunch of the stuff publicly available.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You may leave the stage.
Join me again for some singing. The slide with the words will join in a minute. Join me for the words rise and for the stanza on the right side. We rise, all of the children rise, elders with wisdom rise, ancestors surround us rise. In hope and prayer we find ourselves here. In hope and prayer we're right here. In hope and prayer we find ourselves here. In hope and prayer we're right here. 'Cause we rise, all of the children rise, elders with wisdom rise, ancestors surround us. Rise.
We now turn our attention to how police engage victims and witnesses during the pursuit of suspects. Specifically, we bring your attention to the practice known as show-up identification. Ms. Sharon Battle will now explain this practice, how it harmed her family, and what we have done since that event.
Some things alter your life, some things alter your mind, and some things alter your spirit. Show-ups for me did all these things. Show-up, if you look at the slide, also known as field identification, means an identification procedure in which an eyewitness is presented with a single suspect in person for the purpose of determining whether the eyewitness identifies the individual as the perpetrator. And with that definition, I'll share my family story. In 2018, my 17-year-old son was coming home from a date about a week or so before his high school graduation. He was walking from the bus stop when he was stopped by the police. Now, as a Black mama, you know that just put me in some kind of pain. I didn't know that at this time. But on this night, we had no idea where he was, and we were fearful that something horrible had happened. We called his girlfriend, and she said he'd left her house a long time ago, and he should have been home already. He wasn't answering my calls, but I could see that his phone was now located downtown from my tracking app, not near a bus stop in Montbello. My husband drove downtown to search the streets where his phone showed that he was located somewhere in that area. He had been all kinds of places before, eventually stopping there. I was afraid. Watching my phone tracker follow him further and further and further away from home, finally stopping downtown. My son asked the police to let him call us, but they didn't allow it. He was a minor at the time, 17. The police were looking for a Black male under 20. They were actually looking for 2 Black males under 20 wearing all gray sweats who were armed with a knife and involved in a nearby robbery. My son did not have on gray sweats. He wore black jeans with a belt buckle and other things. So he didn't have a knife on him, but he was stopped at gunpoint. Imagine his fear. Being confronted with a loaded gun for walking home. He was about a mile away from the crime scene. The police put my son in handcuffs, even though he wasn't armed, and posed no threat to them, and positioned him between 2 police officers. This is a critical part of a show-up. If you are held in the custody of police officers standing beside you, what does that conjure up in the mind? So after that, the police then drove a witness by approximately 50 feet from where my son was standing. But what they did was they shined the light on him, took his hoodie off that supposedly he had on while committing this crime. And in that 4.5 seconds, my family trauma multiplied. That area was dimly lit in highly suggestive setting. The witness identified my son as being one of the young men who attempted to steal her truck. On that evidence alone, my innocent son spent 3 days in jail. The felony charge that he could have gotten would have meant 2 to 6 years in prison. His only crime, walking while black. It took 6.5 months and a significant amount of resources and time to clear his name. During that time, he was constantly pressured to plead guilty to a lesser offense. According to our research, 97% of all criminal cases are plea bargained. It's not the movies, y'all. Few people make it to court. The system is flawed. Most don't have the resources and community support that I did. Give a hand clap for Together Colorado. There were other people and faith leaders who came and sat with us. It was very important to have community present. He didn't take a plea deal. He knew he was innocent, but he also knew he had family, the power of community standing beside him. His case was dropped with no explanation. The Denver DA dropped the case with no acknowledgement of the anxiety and trauma they had put my son and our family through. My son hasn't been the same since. So I want you to close your eyes and imagine that this happened to your son or daughter, or with all our gray hair in the room, your grandchildren. So, what if you couldn't find them? What if they spent time in jail? And maybe the outcome was different, and they ended up spending the next 2 to 6 years in prison. My son's experience is not isolated. This happens every day in cities across Colorado and across the country. We at Together Colorado worked with the Denver police, specifically Chief Pazin, to change the policy. The one thing my son had asked for in our group meetings with Together Colorado, he says, I really want to see training changed. So, instead of suing, my son wanted to support and be there for the change of the law, wanted to be treated fairly and other people to be treated fairly, to avoid arrest, jail, court, and the trauma. So when you think of my son or my family, pray for my son. He's still challenged. So now a little bit about our involvement in show-ups. On November 14th, 2019, Together Colorado organized a community forum at Shorter Community AM right here to make a deeply researched and highly emotional case against the police procedure called show-ups. How many of y'all were here? Woo! All right. So, the legislation, HB 21-1142, agencies that employ peace officers, standards and training, or post certified officers now must do things a little bit differently. They must follow best practices and standardized criteria in written policies and training to reduce suggestiveness and cross-racial bias. Collect and report. Date, time, and location of the show-up. Gender, age, and race of the subject of the show-up and of the eyewitness. Alleged crime, outcome of the show-up. This data is displayed on a state-owned and operated website, but is very difficult to navigate. Chief Thomas, will you please come to the microphone? We have another request. Please give Chief Thomas a hand because he's here. Chief Thomas, data about the use of show-ups is reported on the state dashboard, but not on Denver's dashboard. Will you make the data that you already share with the state available on the Denver dashboard by July 1st, 2025?
Thank you, Sharon, for the question. First, let me just, thank you for sharing your story, for your strength, for reliving that pain. And I think it's important to thank Together Colorado for really helping the Denver Police Department evolve, help us work on improving that policy. Yes, I can certainly commit to putting that information on our publicly facing dashboard. I'd like to do it by July 1st. Unfortunately, I'm not really a data person, and so I don't know all the intricacies that's involved in that. But certainly, as quickly as we certainly can, we will make sure that happens. And honestly, most of the things that are currently available on our dashboard are things that community has asked me to put there. So there were a handful of things that I thought were important when I first established the dashboard. But since then, all those things that I have successively added have been things that the community has asked for. So thank you.
Again, give Chief Thomas a hand. And the reason I'm asking you to give him a hand is for commitment to community and being willing to stand and be challenged. Not everywhere are the police willing, the chief of police willing to be challenged. Thank you.
Thank you.
Join me again. We rise up from the wreckage, rise with tears and with courage, rise fighting for life, we rise in hope and prayer. We find ourselves here in hope and prayer. We're right here in hope and prayer. We find ourselves here in hope and prayer. We're right here, we rise up from the wreckage, rise with tears and with courage, rise fighting for life, we rise.
Our next policing practice, in effect, commemorates the murder of George Floyd and countless others. It sounds kind of strange to talk about commemorating murder, but what it does is it focuses on the culture surrounding these events, specifically seeking to train and empower police officers, the active bystanders that can intervene with colleagues to prevent inappropriate behavior. We now welcome Vicki Wilhite back to the podium.
Active bystandership for law enforcement. In 2020, George Floyd was murdered, and there were protests all over the nation against police brutality. In Denver, protesters were on the streets for like 2 weeks, demanding police accountability and reform. Poorly trained police or untrained police and poor decisions cost Denver taxpayers over $15 million. In 2020, Colorado passed legislation that required a police officer to intervene when another officer is using unlawful physical force. And it requires the intervening officer to report the incident. If they don't report, they can be decertified. In 2020, DPD submitted 4 letters of support to receive ABLE training. That's short for Active Bystandership for Law Enforcement. Together Colorado wrote a letter of support and joined the ABLE Steering Committee. ABLE is an evidence-based program that reduces misconduct, improves officer health, and builds trust. ABLE training authorizes and empowers law enforcement to intervene in another officer's actions regardless of his or her rank. It teaches officers how to successfully intervene, and it protects those who do intervene. Anticipated benefits of ABLE are that it will improve police-community relations, that community will be more satisfied with its police department. It improves officer health and wellness, and it reduces harm to the community, including officers. It reduces the risk of officers losing their job, and of course, it reduces risk and lawsuits against the department, against the city, and against individual officers. Since Denver Police Department adopted ABLE, 35 other law enforcement agencies in Colorado have adopted ABLE. That's something. The Denver Police Department is the point of contact for the ABLE statewide consortium that provides awareness, recruitment, and training to other agencies. And so far, they've done 11 trainings around the state, which makes it easier for those rural and smaller departments. So I want to just thank Elisa DiTrioli for leading the effort. Together Colorado has worked with cities outside of Denver, and we are currently talking with Sheriff Marinelli in Jefferson County. They've expressed interest in adding ABLE, so we hope we can get them added next. Next, we'll hear a testimony from an officer.
Officer Joe Unser, and I'm here to speak to you about our active bystandership and peer intervention program, better known as ABLE. I myself have been involved in numerous interventions, whether it be on my peer officers or myself. Sometimes it requires us to have that emotional intelligence and emotional regulation internally of self to be able to realize that we need those interventions. When we talk about active bystandership and peer intervention, what we are referring to is us being able to step in and have those uncomfortable conversations dealing with our actions and our behaviors. And those actions and behaviors sometimes are detrimental to not just the people that are being impacted directly, but also the overall community trust, as well as the reputation of law enforcement within the community. And since we have been a part of this ABLE program for the past 4 years or so, I firmly believe that we have done an excellent job in impacting those incidents that prevent that lack of trust and destruction of the reputation of the police as those that are assigned to serve and protect the community as a whole. So I would like to once again thank you for supporting us in this active bystandership program and ensuring that as the community, ensuring that we are held accountable for our actions and ensuring that we have the community support to make sure that we engage in active bystandership and peer intervention.
Now we'll hear some words from Chief Thomas. They'll be on the screen. One thing, so this is from Chief Thomas. One thing that I read early on, which did ring true, was that the greatest success of ABLE is in the stories that will never be told. ABLE is about the mistakes that were avoided, the misconduct that never occurred, and the officer that didn't take his or her own life. Hallelujah. Chief Thomas, based on the untold stories, ABLE training saves lives on all sides of the law. And while we are discussing training, we are aware at the same time that it is only one part of the employer-employee relationship. Another part is discipline. We are aware and appreciative of your meeting with the community to present and discuss the education-based discipline program, including the recent meeting that you had that was held on May 1st. We encourage you to continue dialogue with the community. We believe community engagement and training like ABLE are valuable tools that do protect people on all sides of the law, but we need to protect what we value by enshrining it into law. City Council, will you please come to the microphone, or the representative, or all? Thank you so much for being here. So here's,
I'm a lot shorter than Chief Thomas,
thank you.
if you haven't noticed.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez Gutierrez. Okay, council member, in 3 minutes or less, will the city council write an ordinance that in conjunction with the biannual OIM report, DPD must report what regular trainings, including ABLE, the recruit officers and experienced officers receive, as well as how many officers are involved in education-based discipline infractions?
So what I will start off by saying is I support being able to figure out how we best put these types of policies in place, but that isn't just me. There's 13 council members, and I do not speak for all of them. And I want to ask any of my colleagues if they would like to add anything. But what I will say is a lot of this work is done in partnership with it would be with our Office of Independent Monitor. It would be with our partners at Denver Police Department to discuss what that would actually look like and what that kind of, when you say enshrine or putting it into policy, into our ordinance, we need to see what the right mechanism is to ensure that that information is being relayed. I think that we do have good partnerships right now, and if we ask for report outs on data, we are receiving that. I think it would be great to be able to get that, maybe have some parameters around the timeliness of those report outs and having that information presented.
Thank you. Is someone else?
I'm Councilmember Sarah Parody, your other city council member at large. What I will say is I've started working on something in this direction because I think that there is a need for council to receive something that's sort of consistent in format, that comes to us regularly, and that helps us understand what we don't know. It can be hard if you haven't dealt with law enforcement much in your career, which I have to some degree because I was a civil rights attorney. But if you haven't, and even if you have, it's hard to know what to ask for. It's hard to know what the scope of that is. And so I have been thinking about that. I've done research on what other cities do along these lines, like what cities do require some kind of regular reporting about training and discipline. And so it's something that I'm excited about, and look forward to sort of taking through our council stakeholding process, talking to other council members about, and all of that. And I'm glad that you guys are raising it too.
Thank you so much for the question and the recommendation. Hi, everybody. One of the things that I'm working on with Councilmember Gilmore is modifying the non-monetary settlement notification to the Office of the Independent Monitor and the Citizen Oversight Board. So we may get notification because council has to approve monetary settlements, but we may not always know non-monetary settlements. So that may include things like recommendations for training. We heard examples where money was not always the desired outcome. It was actually changing the system. And so we may not always find out about those things. So one of the things that we're putting into ordinance is non-monetary settlement notification. And we're working with the monitor's office to make sure that that's the right kind of system, and that they are aware of everything that's coming through in that way. So clarity, transparency is also one of the ways that we get at what is happening in the realm of complaints and claims and settlement agreements, and how is that changing the entire realm of police department and safety.
We appreciate your answer. I think we'll have to stop here because we just had 3 minutes. Okay. And I see the timekeeper over there, And maybe next time when we call you up, somebody, unless it, okay. You okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Singing together is a way to show that we are more than the sum of our parts, and represents a moment of taking in all this information. And this is a commitment to real people coming together to make the world better. We rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise. When hope and prayer we find ourselves here, in hope and prayer we're right here. In hope and prayer we find ourselves here, in hope and prayer we're right here. We rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise.
Next, we will focus on a police training practice initiated collaboratively by DPD and Together Colorado, especially involving some of the leaders speaking to you tonight. This training is called Before the Blue and Beyond the Badge, or B4B for short. We'll begin with a presentation by the Chief and Marie Davos, who is DPD's Director of Community Engagement. So we'll welcome you to back up.
I feel like I'm 6 years old again in church asking where I should be and where I should stand and things like that. Anyway, so I just want to give kind of a brief description of how kind of we got here with this program, and then I'll turn it over to Director Davos, who runs our community engagement division, to talk about the actual program. So I do a lot of independent reading and really trying to study what other police agencies are doing across the country. You know, I try to identify best practices and things that should be adopted here in Denver. And, you know, I remember when I first introduced this to City Council, I said that I stole it from Seattle, and they said, you probably, as a police officer, you probably shouldn't say that you stole something. So I borrowed from Seattle. I read a story about how the chief in Seattle had instituted this program by which he had all of his officers, before they went through the actual academy, they went through sort of a immersion course, if you will, with the community. And I did some additional study, sent some people to ask some more questions and find out more about it. And the more I learned about it, the more I thought that it really solved a problem that really that I thought more and more about, you know, kind of going back to my own academy experience 37 years ago. I grew up in Southeast Denver, was assigned to a police district in Northeast Denver. And so there's a little bit of a culture shock, if you will, you know, living in a certain community, then going to police another community. And I just met with 51 officers in our current academy class that finished B4B over 2 weeks, and then started their first day of in-class instruction on Monday. And I asked them, how many people are from Denver? And probably a quarter of the class raised their hand. So 3/4 of the class are from outside of the Denver area, and probably half of the class didn't even come from the state. And so I can only imagine, you know, sort of the culture shock to them when they go to police their own communities, and or the communities that they get assigned to. And you know, and I thought, what a disadvantage it is for an officer to learn how to be a police officer, but then also have to try to learn the cultural norms, learn, quite frankly, sometimes the reasons for historical mistrust. And I thought that, why don't I introduce them to all of those concepts before they even learn how to be a police officer, so that they can really become ingrained in that. And then when they get assigned to their district, they have some sense of cultural norms, they have some sense of community, they have some sense of the reasons for historical mistrust. And so we put together this program. I think it's been effective. I know that there's going to be an ask to memorialize this going forward, or to at least do some study to identify its true value. And I just personally, believe that it has significant value. And so I'm committed to continuing with this program, but I'll let Marie come up and explain it to everyone.
Thanks, Chief. Yes, my name is Marie Davis, and I'm the Director for Community Engagement for the Denver Police Department. And I've truly, truly had the great joy of building this program from the ground up with the community of Together Colorado. It's been an amazing experience, and I think we have all learned so much about each other and ingrained ourselves in this program that we believe in so strongly. We can go to the next slide too. Perfect. So it is a community-led immersive training for recruits. We call it an orientation, but it emphasizes building community relationships before we teach police officers tactical skills. It deepens their understanding of the very complex and often challenging realities of law enforcement, and it features powerful firsthand stories from community members like we've heard tonight. It is a 2-week, 80-hour training. And you can see from the diagram at the bottom of that PowerPoint, our recruits go through the very extensive application background check process, and then they're hired by the Denver Police Department. And the very first day in the Denver Police Department as police officers is this Before the Blue and Beyond the Badge program. They go through the training for 2 weeks, and then they experience our 6-month academy, and then they graduate and are sent out onto the streets as police officers. Program impacts, not that we're competitive, but we are. We launched in May 2023, so it's been going for 2 years. We have trained 9 recruit classes and 310 recruits, which has beat Seattle a lot. Yeah. And honestly, we were talking really for Together Colorado to say they have impacted that large of a percentage of our police officers is staggering. Our mission statement is Before the Blue and Beyond the Badge is an experiential training program designed to provide new recruits with a comprehensive understanding of the community they serve through an immersive dialogue with community leaders, public officials, faith-based organizations, and community advocates. It provides recruits with foundational knowledge to succeed as partners in the community, as well as uphold the privilege of earning and maintaining public trust. We have 5 main program objectives: build trust, deepen community understanding, challenge biases, foster empathy, and reinforce responsibility. Day 1, as I mentioned, it's their first experience as police officers for the Denver Police Department. They get a really basic overview, HR type briefing, and then they're given the history of the Denver Police Department first, led by our Denver Police Museum. And then Marilyn's going to go much more in depth into the explanation of this, the history of policing as taught by Together Colorado. And it's really a deep dive into the very complex history of policing nationally as well as here in Denver. And then the next 8 days are spent traveling around Denver to learn firsthand the makeup of Denver and the individual cultures and challenges of each neighborhood. I like to think of it as a literal field trip for our police officers. We stick them in buses and we drive them to all areas of the city so they can talk and engage and see the community from the community's perspective and hear those narratives firsthand. And then our final day is spent at the Denver Dream Center. And this is really the accumulation of our whole program. They get to engage with individuals who have faced significant life challenges. You can see one of the first pictures over there are our recruits and program participants who were formerly incarcerated, talking in small groups very intimately, very closely about their backgrounds, their lived experiences, their motivations, and really what brought them to wherever they are. And both recruits and program participants, we find often are surprised at the commonalities that exist between them and the bond that is formed very quickly from those conversations. And then after that, they spend, and we can go back really quick. There's a picture of some of our recruits. They then go and do some street outreach where they pass out water bottles, granola bars, other necessities to some of the individuals living in the area around the Dream Center. And we really encourage them, and it stretches them, it makes them uncomfortable to engage with them. Say, how's your day? Do you want some water? How are you doing? And really have some great conversations with those community members. And it's so powerful to be able to see their perspectives evolve as they have those interactions throughout the day. And then the very last part of the day, and I think I would say our favorite part of the experience, they do a quick debrief, and they do that debrief with program participants from the Denver Dream Center and with Together Colorado. And so everyone talks about their experiences and what stuck with them. And then the recruits are given an assignment to write a capstone project or a capstone paper about what stuck with them, what changed them, maybe some biases that they were able to identify and overcome. And it's really a neat thing to do. We all get to then read those stories and hear that feedback. So as co-founders of the program, both Together Colorado and the Denver Police Department, in the very beginning in the building of this program, we recognize the importance of measuring its impact. But we also acknowledge that that is a pretty large challenge to evaluate intangibles such as empathy, changed perspective, and relationship building. So we reached out to the Mayor's Office of Social Equity and Innovation, and they created a survey that they administer both at the beginning of the program and then at the end of the program to help track changes in attitudes and awareness of their community as they partake in the program. As a separate third-party office, they manage the data, they manage the survey to ensure transparency and objectivity in the evaluation process. Some examples of survey questions include, I can easily put myself in the shoes of community members when interacting with them. I understand the importance of building trust with the communities I serve, and I understand how cultural differences might impact my interactions with community members. And again, those questions are administered at the beginning of the training and then at the end. The results are continuously changing as we better figure out how to evaluate what's taking place, but the results are promising. One of the most outstanding responses that we've seen is that recruits have strong and unwavering beliefs. So 96%, both at the beginning of the survey and at the end, said they either strongly agree or agree that public trust is essential for policing. And 97% said it's important for officers to understand the community. And then we also have some open-ended questions within that survey, and some of those questions have given us even some additional insight into what takes place during the training. One of the questions that we asked is, what motivates you to be a police officer? And you can look at this graph and see the lighter blue is before the training, and then the gray is after the training. And it shows community policing and trust building became stronger motivators for recruits after they completed the program. And then recruits became less motivated by protection and safety as they experienced the training. And some of just the other ways we've been able to measure impact, at least in the short term, has been our community partners. We have over 80 community partners who have been involved in this program. And here's a list of not all 80, but many. Yes. I mean, it is very, very staggering to see how diverse it is. And what we've found is that these community members ask and they want to be involved in this program because they see value in it and because they feel a responsibility to help in the training of their police officers. And that is powerful. They're giving of their own time to engage with these police officers, but they know the value that is there. And then internally, some of the impacts that we've already seen, I jokingly always say, if Chief Thomas tells our commanders they have to do something, they have to do it. And we did find when we first started this program, there's some hesitation with adding 2 weeks onto training. But they do it because Chief Thomas tells them they have to. But as they have participated, as they have engaged, as they have seen the things that have taken place, and then now seen the officers coming out of the academy, they're bought into it. And we've had 3 out of our 6 districts where the commanders voluntarily, without Chief Thomas telling them, made a continuation of the B4B program and have required that their recruits, once they're assigned to their district, they have to participate in community engagement events, which to me is powerful when they do something they don't have to. Right, Chief? And then just the very last point that I think is so important. I find it fascinating as well as a little bit ironic that both Together Colorado and our team at DPD have had an extensive amount of criticism from our own communities for working together. Very consistently, people are saying to us, they're not our friends. Why are you spending time with them? Why are you talking with them? And to me, that proves the entire point of the program. Chief Thomas was very, very deliberate and strategic in making Together Colorado not just involved in the program, but co-founders who built the program from the very, very beginning. That's very, very important. And there are some reasons for that. First and foremost, it centers diverse voices. B4B is rooted in authentic dialogue, not scripted dialogue, not picking the community members that we want to talk to our recruits, but authentic dialogue. And it truly prepares our recruits for the communities they serve. It's essential that they hear from a full range of community perspectives, including those that challenge us and make us uncomfortable. It builds trust through transparency, including groups that are not always our strongest supporters, show that we're willing to listen, reflect, and grow. It builds credibility of the program, again, that we're not just cherry picking the groups we want to be engaged, but that Together Colorado is saying, hey, make sure you're going over here, make sure you're going over here. And it shows our commitment to credibility. It creates space for change, which again, I feel like was embodied so well tonight. But when we invite dialogue for critical voices, we open the door for mutual understanding. The community members who very courageously share their experiences do so because they want to help make positive change. They're willing to make themselves vulnerable to show our recruits how to be better officers one day. This last few weeks, we were able to hear 2 women in the deaf community and their stories about fear and confusion that exists when they were pulled over for a traffic stop. And our recruits being able to look through their eyes and empathize with their experience, that will stick with those recruits their entire career. And that is so, so, so valuable. And then it also models courageous engagement. We're saying as leaders, we're willing to lean into these difficult conversations and talk to people who maybe see things differently than us, because we know that that's community and that's valuable. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Marilyn, who will talk about what they present to our recruits.
Thank you, Marie. Should have Moshe up here getting us excited again, but we're not. Good evening. I'm Marilyn Ackerman, a leader with Together Colorado. I am also a member and an elder at Montview Boulevard Presbyterian Church. I'm a resident of Central Park in Police District 5 and City Council District 8. And I'm a second and third generation American citizen. My immigrant ancestors were never involved in chattel slavery, but they did greatly benefit from all of its free labor. As a member of Together Colorado, Vicki Wilhite and myself were the ones called to help create this new policing engagement program alongside Chief Thomas and his staff. At first, we were skeptical, and as Marie said, we were mostly surprised to be asked to help with a new police training. But on reflection, we felt that we say at Together Colorado all the time, we care about everyone on all sides of the law. Why wouldn't we want to be at the table co-creating this opportunity to change the type of policing we want to see in our communities? On day 1, B4B recruits interact with Together Colorado's 2.5-hour presentation to learn about the highly racialized history of policing within our country, state, and in Denver, starting 400 years ago. We discuss the history of policing routes that began during chattel slavery to keep human beings enslaved. We share our seamy side of our history in Colorado, like our 30 to 35,000 registered white men in Metro Denver who were card-carrying members of the KKK. We were second only to Indiana in the 1920s. We openly discuss our terrible treatment of our indigenous siblings through Colorado's history of land grabs and massacres. We discuss our over-policing of unique populations such as Blacks, LGBTQ+, disabled, Latino, Chinese, and other marginalized groups throughout our history here in Denver. We unveil past Denver police corruptions and their illegal spying on various groups and individuals. We walk through many of the police shootings and the use of force incidents that caused Together Colorado and many other community organizations to rally around police reforms. The purpose of our discussion on day 1 is to magnify to the recruits how trust has been broken by negative police interactions and is in desperate need of repair with our communities. Trust must be earned back through behavior change and positive engagements in conjunction with training. We discuss how shameful our history of arresting and imprisoning so many more Black, brown, and Indigenous boys before age 18 creates a pipeline from school to prison, and that as adults, these once youth sometimes can never get out of that maze that we call our justice system. We also talk about the numerous programs that have saved lives and kept residents from arrest and jail. We inform recruits of multiple ways they will be able to divert folks from tickets or jail to receive services rather than arrest. We bring to light programs like STAR, Support Team Assisted Response, that send out clinicians and EMTs rather than police. We discuss the Denver Police Department Community Resource Officers that can take over for officers to offer assistance and find needed resource for trauma-impacted individuals. Most importantly, we share how being at the table with police and pushing on reforms rather than resisting these important dialogues and relationships are helping to bring about the change we all want. We have small breakout groups of 4 to 5 throughout our time to get recruits to examine if they think everyone believes that police driving into their neighborhoods will protect and serve them. Or are some communities afraid to see police cars and uniforms near them? We get them to share their life experiences with policing and what their families might think of their new professional choice, both positively and negatively. We encourage them to be vulnerable, curious, and open to new thoughts throughout these 2 weeks in our communities. Together Colorado volunteers continue to engage and walk with recruits into all 6 districts throughout those 10 days. We sit, interact in their group discussions. We encourage their engagement as they listen to community tell their stories of police involvement, both positive and negative. How many of you have participated in our B4B training day? If you haven't, come join us now. Can I see a raise of hands? Well, that's pretty good. That's great. Relational policing engagement is grounded in the premise that police are the community and the community are the police. If we don't see all sides of policing, we cannot change and grow from past mistakes. Officers and community members together, we remind them that we are human under our clothing and that they too are human under their uniforms. We want them to begin every interaction with victims and suspects right there. As an example, we see more humane treatment occurring in public safety through Chief Sheriff Diggins and Councilwoman Lewis's directive to have jail residents be able to wear street clothes during their visits with their loved ones. This is how human dignity values can align with our work together. Also, just last night, City Council voted unanimously against extending the city contract for Flock, the license plate camera readers throughout our city. Although these readers have helped in positive ways find stolen cars and solve many other crimes, their data can be shared with our federal government in these frightening times of surveillance of our immigrant siblings. We cannot afford more unintended consequences for our immigrant friends. This is what co-governance using a human dignity lens looks like. Okay, back to B4B. We love seeing more people of color and women joining the Denver Police Force. Every class has its own flavor or vibe, but the overall feeling we see is one of officers wanting to be the change in policing for the better health of our communities. We want this program to be ongoing and would love it to expand to all officers, especially patrol officers, no matter when they join Denver. We have asked and been assured that lateral recruits by chief, recruits who come from other police departments, participate in this program going forward. It shows these new officers that community engagement is now a Denver priority. Officers who came from other states that there is no orientation to culture or who the communities they served include. We believe B4B is changing the community's perception of Denver's policing. We are telling our recruits that we are looking for a different type of officer, no matter who we look like, no matter how much money we have, what religion we follow, our disability, or our neighborhood. This is different from what some communities have experienced in the past. And in order to build that trust, there has to be genuine relationships built. The Academy Director, Lieutenant Jesse Campion, and his team are creating new training and documenting positive change in these cadets these past 2 years. We became involved in this training because we believe B4B can improve the behavior and performance of police officers in how they engage with the community. Now, after 2 years, we need to measure the impact and share these outcomes with the community regularly. Marie and I are going to read some quotes here back and forth from what the recruits have said about B4B.
So these quotes come from both the surveys, which are anonymous, as well as the capstone projects that they write. In the beginning, I thought that all people who break the law are the same. After attending this program, I have come to realize that these people do want to change. This program completely changed my outlook. Being a police officer is not just about finding crime. It's about showing the community we're human beings behind the badge.
I was left in tears. The Dream Centers team, many of whom were once clients, showed me what the true compassion looks like. Urban Peaks stability allows youth to build confidence and begin working toward their dreams. Their potential is unlimited.
Every encounter with community members is an opportunity to improve policing practices and reinforce our commitment to justice and equity. Seeing and talking and being interactive with the community had the most impact on me. I heard and saw so much. I'm a Denver native, and I learned most in the past week from the community itself than the entire time I've lived here.
I used to see officers as separate from the community. Now I know we are part of it. Their successes are our successes. Before B4B, I had a cookie idea of community. Now I understand it's about shared responsibility and deeper connection.
I felt very moved by meeting the community members and especially the outreach programs available to all. I am proud to have the opportunity to help those who really care about where they live. I have lived in and around Denver almost my whole life, and I learned more about this city this week than I have in over 20 years. It was super encouraging to talk with community leaders and organizers about their issues and ways police have helped and hurt their communities. I will try to keep that with me throughout the academy and my career as a police officer. I would like to get involved with the Dream Center after this and learn a lot from hearing from my classmates at the end of the day, as well as the Together Colorado presentation. Thank you for this.
Being a police officer is what you were made to be. Here am I. Send me. I truly believe police officers have been sent by God to serve and protect. Thank you, Marie. Whoops, I lost my place here. So Chief Thomas, if you'd come to the mic. This program's success could be evaluated on data such as complaints, compliments, lawsuits, payouts. We're working on that. Along with enshrining and expanding this B4B training, will you collect and share publicly data that compares the performance of officers who have attended the B4B program to the performance of those who did not participate? And you can have a couple minutes to talk about that.
I probably don't need that long. Yes. In fact, on Friday, I have a meeting with some folks from the University of Virginia, their solutions lab, to talk about how we can do that.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Councilwoman Parody, for introducing the University of Virginia to Chief and us. So it's time for the council to come back up again. Thanks so much, Chief. So council, can you make an ordinance to enshrine a training program for recruits before they enter the academy that includes learning a racialized history of policing of our nation, state, and city, like B4B, it doesn't have to be called that. We also ask that this training includes interactions with our community member organizations in each district. And can you commit to this by the end of July? And you've got 3 minutes.
I'll take some of my 3 minutes to tell you all a story. So after the death of my fiance and child's father.
Closer to the mic.
A little closer? Better? So he was suddenly killed in a car accident. And I used to spend a lot of time with my younger sister, and she used to spend a lot of time with him. And after his car accident, we spent a lot of time together. And there was a particular night where she wanted to take me to the movie theaters to get me out of the house, because obviously I've been pretty sad about his sudden death. And so we decided to go to the movies, which was pretty new, in Central Park. And I was in his car, which was a black two-door Acura. And she and I were traveling on MLK Boulevard towards Central Park, and we decided to turn on Steele. This is when you could still go up the highway instead of down the highway in order to enter. And as we were traveling on MLK, 2 officers got behind us, and we thought nothing of it because we know we hadn't done anything. We just kept driving. And by the time we turned left on Steele, there were multiple officers behind us, and none of them had actually turned on their lights. We just noticed that there were a bunch of cars. And so by the time we got to the intersection of 40th and Steele, there was a helicopter, police from all sides of the streets, right on, from each direction. And they were telling us to get out of the car. And they asked me to throw my keys out of the car, but then I can't roll the window down to actually get out. And so I'm panicking. My little sister's in the car. I just lost my fiance. I'm scared that I'm about to lose my little sister. We have shotguns, rifles, all kinds of things pointed at us. We have no idea what we've done. Not whatsoever. And I end up getting out of the car, having to back up, like to walk backwards. They put me on the ground, handcuff me, ask me who's in the car. I'm telling my younger sister's in the car. They're asking about some man in the car. I have no idea what they're talking about. It's my little sister. My little sister ends up getting out of the car in the same manner as I do, is handcuffed, placed on the ground. They search the car, throw everything out. They find nothing. And they said, oh, we were looking for 2 Hispanic men in a Nissan Altima, white. Not quite sure why we were pulled over to begin with. The reason I tell that, so the conclusion of that was the officers told us when we were done, I hope you all enjoy your movie, like very sarcastically, right? And so when you all invite me into this work and you ask me to do this, I need you to understand that who's coming to this work is someone who doesn't play about these experiences. I am more than happy to be able to enshrine some of these policies, but not in a manner in which we water down the experiences of Black and brown folks in this country and these communities.
Thank you.
Because that was just one of many encounters that I had with police officers. And while I appreciate your work, I appreciate the work of Chief Thomas and everyone in here and your ability to get these done, I do feel as though there's an opportunity for us to address the roots of these issues. And I don't know if we get at it in this way, but I'm happy to be a part of this. But I have to say that I do bring that trauma, my experiences with police officers, into this space. And that is trauma that I experience often still, even as a city council member. I still have those experiences with officers. And so, sure, I'm more than open to exploring what this could look like, but I won't water it down. I won't water me down. And it's going to be very uncomfortable if it's work that is ever going to come out of my council office. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Lewis.
I have something to add to that, which is that if there's an ordinance like this in front of me, I'm happy to vote yes on it, because I think that the idea of people having to at least hear real history is important, and we can't take that for granted. But I also would say that I have a long list of commitments to ordinances that are going to be a real fight to pass, and where I think there's going to be a lot of where I don't know that we'll ever get DPD quite to the exact place where I think our law needs to be completely honest. So an example of this is around the flock cameras that we just talked about. Those cameras are still operating in the city as of tonight because they're still on under a pilot program, and they're harmful. They just are. So we may need to regulate that. We may need to pass an ordinance about that. And the kind of ordinance that I have in mind for that is not going to end up being passed with the unanimous support of everybody in law enforcement. It's just not. So I support the idea of training that is incredibly honest. I want to see where the University of Virginia analysis takes us. I want to see if it sticks. I worry that people enter a culture that will maybe quickly eclipse some of those insights that they had during those 2 weeks. And so I'm interested in that. I want to see where it goes. And I have a lot of ordinances on my plate that that I think are going to be harder to accomplish anyway, other than through legislation. I'll put it that way. Thank you.
One quick one, yeah.
I think you've got 5 council members up here and several others on city council who were thrilled to hear about the formation and the success of Before the Badge, the intensity with which it's provided as well. One of the things that council, in addition to being the legislative body, we also approve budget. And this is a component that costs the department something to add to its academy each each time they have a cohort. I think I and others with me would also make sure that the department is able to retain that budget to include these 2 weeks prior to the academy, because I could envision a date when Chief Thomas isn't here, when we're not here on council, when things get shaved off, right? And I think that is a different kind of commitment that your council body can make to what you're building to ensure that something stays funded.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn.
Thank you. Thank you, council members.
One
One more.
thing.
Okay.
With that fact is that, yes, again, like we need to figure out how we can make sure that these things live on, right? And it may not always be called the same thing. And so I know when I met with you all, that's what we talked about, was the fact that we need to figure out how to make sure that this does go on and that it doesn't die with whoever's, currently in this position as our chief, right? If this is what Chief Thomas is out here saying, this is what we want, we need to figure out how it lives beyond that. So this training, whether it's through the budget or, lives in ordinance or in a way that is codified so that we can ensure that it doesn't just go away depending on who is in those positions. So, and I want to thank you, Councilwoman Lewis, for sharing with us.
Thank you. You may be seated. Thanks. It's all right. We're a little behind schedule here. I'm going to try to make up some time here. So, Chief, if you want to step up to the mic, you and I are going to move to this next part here. So we, hold on a minute. Our last policing practice we're reviewing tonight is the too often violent engagements that result during police-initiated traffic stops. And in Denver, Chief Thomas initiated a police practice aimed at reducing this risk. And so Together Colorado, we started researching other cities like Philadelphia 3 or 4 years ago on how we might convince the Denver chief at the time to eliminate low traffic level traffic stops that seemed to just be going worse and worse with armed officers interacting. And so last May, Chief Thomas just came into the office, to the city council, and announced that he was going to be doing that, and we didn't even have a conversation. So that was pretty astounding. So, Chief, we'd like you to tell us your story of why you made this decision and how that policy is working. And I think we had 4.5 minutes, but can we cut it down by
Yeah, I'm sure we can.
Okay, thanks.
Let me first give credit where credit is due. So I was first introduced to the concept of reducing traffic stops by Dr. Lisa Calderon, Dr. Robert Davis, other members of the Reimagine Policing and Public Safety Task Force. So I think it's important to give them credit for really introducing this concept to public safety in Denver. They were the ones that brought the Vera Institute here to give a presentation on what that looks like and how it's had impact in other cities. And so I was already armed with that. And then shortly after that, I was approached by Councilman Cashman, who was interested, I think, initially in introducing an ordinance to limit traffic stops. He asked me for some data, which actually taught me quite a bit, the review of that data. And in our discussions, I kind of told him that my preference at the time was to get there through a policy change rather than an ordinance change. And my reasoning for that was because I can institute policies much more quickly, I think, than legislation can be completed. Also, I think that sometimes there are unintended consequences, I think, that come along with legislation. And so, I think, and this is one of the things that I shared with Councilman Cashman, is that I do believe that there is some utility in traffic stops. But one of the things that I learned through my study was that we did a lot of traffic stops, and I'll show you some slides here coming up. We did a lot of traffic stops But a lot of these traffic stops didn't result in anything. They didn't result in a ticket. They didn't result in an arrest. They didn't result in any recovery of contraband or guns or anything like that. And so on paper, it would appear as though it was kind of a waste of time. And I won't go so far as to say that these officers were wasting their time, but certainly, when you're engaging in a number of traffic stops and there's nothing that comes of that, there appears to be better things you can do with your time. And I think that in addition to that, you are harming the community. I mean, I'm sure that there is disparate impact. The data shows that there's disparate impact with the traffic stops that we were taking. So I really began to commit myself to how can we make this work. And so the policy that I instituted was that you can conduct a low-level traffic stop, and low-level in by definition is a stop that doesn't have a safety nexus. So obviously, speeding infractions, disobedience to traffic signals, those kinds of careless driving, reckless driving infractions are not low-level, but having a tail light out or a headlight out, having a very freshly expired tag or something like that. Those are things that we would consider to be low level. And so the only justification that an officer would have for engaging in that stop is if they can connect it to something else, to another crime that's being committed or some probable cause or reasonable suspicion. I'll give a quick example. So let's say you're an officer who's assigned to a precinct and you know that during your shift and in that precinct, they're having an issue with overnight burglaries, and you see a car driving down the street very slowly, and it could possibly be this person that is casing houses and involved in these burglaries. Could also be the paperboy, but if the only thing that you can use to stop that car is because they have a taillight out or a headlight out or something like that, then you need to write that justification on a report so that you can connect that reason to that stop. And what has resulted from that, as you can see from the graph, is a significant reduction in stops. So, January, February of 2024, we were well over 5,000 stops. The policy was initiated in May of 2024, so we immediately went down to less than 2,000, and we have stayed less than 2,000. Sometimes breaching 2,000 or 3,000, but again far short of the 5,000 before. Much of that due because I think we're not engaging in low level traffic stops. And so if you go to the next slide, that I talked about the obvious disparate impact from low level traffic stops. This shows the reduction in the various ethnic categories of who we're stopping.
Thank you. You have
You're
anything else to? Okay. The question is for City Council. So you guys are back up here again. You're getting your steps in tonight. Thank you, Chief Thomas. As you all can see, this change in police policy has had a positive effect on reductions. But again, this positive change we think must be enshrined to protect it from changing administrations, because I think the chief will retire eventually someday. City council members, in 3 minutes or less, will the city council be willing to pass an ordinance to solidify police policy regarding discontinuation of low-level traffic stops? And if you could do it in 2 minutes, people will get out of here.
I'll try for 90 seconds. I think it's become apparent to all of you that my purpose here tonight has simply been as arm candy for my colleagues. But I do have a couple of things to say. The first thing, I want to say is, being here tonight, I'm going to lose some sleep. I play a little bit of guitar, and I'm going to be up late trying to perfect Rise. If you could send me a tape, sir, I would very much appreciate it. So, to get to the topic at hand, as Chief mentioned, Vera Institute in my knowledge, has been one of the institutions really delving into this topic of low-level stops and how they're unfairly applied to people of color. And it's interesting for me to have walked the planet for 3/4 of a century and never had a door closed on me because of who I am and what I look like, or be pulled over by a police officer because who I am and what I look like. I have been pulled over a few times for driving like a moron, but that's another set of issues. But I became a member of a cohort that Vera Institute had diving into this topic of low-level stops. And the information becomes very compelling very quickly. So I did go to Chief Thomas and make an appointment and said, hey, I've learned this about the Vera Institute information. And he said, I've been thinking about that. And then he told me about his own experience of being pulled over for driving while black. And as he mentioned a few minutes ago, his preference was to do it in policy. I'm a legislator. My preference is to do it in ordinance, but he explained, his reasoning. And I brought Councilwoman Parity came in when Chief had the policy written up. And I have tremendous faith in this chief. If he were going to be chief forever, I don't know that I'd be as concerned with getting this into ordinance. But who knows who we're going to get next? And the policy is critical to the safety of our residents.
So can we do it?
Pardon me?
Can we do it? Can we put it into ordinance?
I don't have any question that we can do it. I brought the topic up to the chief. He has a few questions on some things he wants to be sure might be incorporated in that policy for needed flexibility. I don't think it'll be a problem getting to the point of an ordinance that will meet our needs.
Okay, thank you. You can sit down.
Thank you all. Thank you all. That takes us through our community update of presenting to you 5 topics through the format as discussed. What we're going to try and do with the balance of our few minutes yet together is what is always a real-time challenge, but I've got great help over here in the front pew to my right, is to now try to quickly summarize what we think we heard. All good meetings should end with a summary so we all have a sense of what we all heard and agreed to. And then I want to draw you in while I still have your attention for a couple minutes. And this sometimes has the kind of host privilege to make sure my words aren't too far afield, but I have you all here with me still. First, to use of force. What we captured there, and I appreciate the chief both explaining bringing the dashboard to us and explaining how reporting and definitions have changed. So we have a understanding in there. It's more of an explanation, and then I think it's a need to check in going forward to understand how we see use of force data going forward once we build a consistent baseline. I think that's the piece there. Secondly, on show-ups, the chief was very clear that yes, he's committed to bringing on the Denver dashboard the data on show-up identification. There was a desire to get it by July 1st, if possible, or as quickly as possible. So we have that. I think we'll be talking on July 1st to see how we're doing then, is where we stand there. Third, we get to ABLE, or active bystander training. And I think here, and I want to pause, and I'm going to kind of pivot a minute, if I may, because we heard a lot of, and appreciate having 5 council people here. We learned a great lesson. That one lesson we learned is we're too shy of a quorum. So next time we'll aim for 7. And then we'll just see how that takes us. But in all seriousness, in the spirit of co-governance, which is what we really honor, and we do appreciate all of you being able and willing to work with us in this in this way of understanding what we're trying to accomplish, I think what we walk away from is recognizing in several of your responses here that there is a complexity to this conversation that has to do sometimes with choice of language, with the types of questions that we would ask, and we being the council asked of DPD, so that when you go to put this into ordinance, that you have made it clear both what you're asking for and what the objective is. And I think we see that there's more work to be done there. I want to come back to that in a minute. First, I want to pause, though, and say, Councilwoman Lewis, I'm so glad you're my councilwoman. Thank you very much. I want to say that if there's nothing else I'd take away, you always humanize policy for us. So thank you for doing that. And I think that's what we get out of this. And because we can do research, but you can remind us of what this is all about. So you ground us there. And I thank you for that. And I hear in that too, you challenge us back. We're here to challenge you. You're challenging us. And so I hear in that, especially when we take something as comprehensive as saying, how do you change culture? How do you change culture of police? That we have to think about what an ordinance could do and not do to change culture. And can you really do that? It reminds me of something my father said to me when I was probably a teenager, that you can't legislate morality. In the same way, we can't capture culture easily in an ordinance. And so in doing so, I think what I'm taking away from all of these places, aside from what we heard from Councilman Cashman about something that's a little more focused like low-level traffic stops, and that we can work on that. But when you take something more complex of how do you have a relationship between council and the city and the police department and data, how do you take a relationship in terms of how we want to train new recruits, I think what we take away from this, and I'm now adding words to this conversation, is that we need to keep that co-governance and set a time between now and, let's say, the middle of the year, where we are drawn in further to how are we doing on building that language? How do we decide, is there language that works in ordinance, or is it not ordinance? And do we have to come to terms with that? It may not be that. So I take that away from this as well. So that's what I see there. And I think that's the key thing. And also, Chief, thank you for that commitment back on B4B, is that commitment to working with UVA and the Solutions Lab and collecting and sharing and evaluating, because I think there is ways that we can build this into that leadership culture at DPD. And so we take that away from this as well. But that would be my way of summarizing what we have. With that, and because we are short on time, unless any of my colleagues feel there's something else that I need to capture from tonight, I bring you to why you had a card in front of you in your pew. And that what we're trying to do here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is that all of the social progress that we talked about tonight, it reflects the dedicated efforts of multiple leaders. Leaders you saw in front of you, but people who had Together Colorado at some event in years past were sitting in the pew listening to this process. And they filled out a card. And they said, yeah, I'd like to be part of that. And then that became the people who are now in front of you, or the people that are helping out on the sides. And so we are sustaining this work, but it requires us always looking to how we expand who is at the table with us and who's replacing us someday. Even someone like Councilman Cashman thinks someday he might retire. I hear it. Never. But you got to be thinking ahead. So that point is, so I put in front of you a card that's on here, and that quickly it says, invite me to participate in a future meeting. So if you want to do that, please let us know that. Invite me to participate in B4B activities. Or if I want to learn how to organize my community, because this is all about the essence of community organizing. It's simple, elegant, and it's involved, and it's messy, and it's everything, it's life, but become part of it. And tell us if you want to be contacted by Together Colorado about other opportunities, no matter where you live. So please fill that out. Take a minute on that, but as we now draw to a close, that is sort of our final ask of you then, is that you realize out of this, that community-led change works, and you're seeing it here tonight. Please be part of it. That, as we said at the beginning, there are things happening at the federal level, and you can eloquently, euphemistically say the winds are changing, but it's the same way when you can tell when the wind's out of the north, you live in Denver, and it doesn't smell right. Those winds are changing too. Kind of thing. So you've got to be aware of this, and we got to take action, and we need you to be part of that, and we need you in whatever part of your faith life and your faith community to realize this is faith in action and become part of that. So with that, we are going to draw ourselves to a close at this point. I think I'm looking at all of my fellow leaders. You don't lead alone, you lead together, And with that, we would ask you on your way out to take that card you filled out. You'll see baskets on the way out. Please put that in. And we thank you for giving us 2 hours of your evening and being part of this. And we wish you a safe journey home and stay in touch with us. Yeah, and it's always wonderful having our council and chief of police with us.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Ooh, mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I'll like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. The silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Ooh, mountains, bring it to its feet. Ooh, mountains, and I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. That we have each other, and for that we have each other, and we will rise, we will rise, we'll rise, we'll rise. I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up in spite of the ache. I will rise 1,000 times again.